Good morning. My name is Eva Konchal, and I'm a CEE manager at EVPA. I'm looking forward to this meeting today, our second webinar from the series of CEE webinars. So we are just starting, and before we go into the content, I want to give you a couple of technical hints how to use the platform, GoToWebinar. All of you who will be joining slowly, and I can see the list is populating, you have access to control panel. And what is important is the tab with questions. You will see this on your left-hand side. This is the place where you will be able to pose the questions to the speakers, and Staszek will be collecting them. Very quickly, two brief information about EVPA. For those of you who are joining this webinar for the first time, we are the European membership organization, and we bring over 300 members and practitioners of venture philanthropy, social investment, impact investment from Europe, and also we have some members from outside of Europe. As you see, it's a quite broad group of organizations. We support those organizations, institutions, companies in learning what is impact investment, but also helping those who are already working on those topics and supporting impact businesses in Europe and beyond. And of course, what we do, we wouldn't be able to do alone. So on different occasions and on different projects that we do, we actually engage with different partners. And I'm really excited that for this series of webinars, we actually have excellent 3 partners that are working with us. So we have a company, Vale and Castor, which is a family investment firm that is actually doing impact investment and implementing impact strategies in the venture capital activities. We have Inspired, and Marta will be talking to us today, which is a niche consulting and advisory company specializing in ESG and responsible investing. And we have also a Polish private equity and venture capital association that is helping us to promote the series. And today, I'm really going very quickly because we have excellent lineup of speakers. So what I want to do is really give more space to our speakers today. So we have Christoph Klein from ESG Portfolio Management Company that will share his experiences on how he's implementing SDGs and ESG strategies in his work. Michał Radziwiłł, I'm really happy that we will have an opportunity to present the first Polish social venture capital fund and learn from their experience. And even more exciting, I think it's to have Bart Głowacki from Solas, which is actually an impact business and which is in the portfolio of the social venture capital fund. And then we have Marta, as I mentioned, from Inspired, Staszek, that will collect your questions and will guide us through the Q&A, and myself moderating the discussion. So that's our agenda. This is how we're going to go through our topics. Marta, the floor is yours. Take us through the introduction to SDGs for all of those who don't know what it is, but I think many people actually know. So thank you, Marta.
Thank you, Eva, and welcome everyone. Yes, we have a very good and very interesting lineup, and I know this presentation by heart, so I know how many interesting informations do we have over there. So my role here is to set a stage and get some context as we will approach the case studies in the second part of the webinar. So let me start with a little flashback from our first webinar. I will just ask you to click the slide now. When we introduced the spectrum of responsible and sustainable investments, as you can see on the graph on the left, we have traditional investors who are focused on return and financial metrics with no regard to environmental, social, or governance practices. And then as we move to the right, we explore more sophisticated and advanced approaches to responsible investing, from negative screening aimed to protect the investment value, through progressive practices in portfolio decisions to enhance value, thematic investments, impact investing, and impact first, impact investing for impact approach. We talked in detail about this during the first webinar, that you can access online if you missed this one. But today we will focus on this little rounded in a red circle thing that is called SDG related investing. And let me set some stage with the context. SDGs, UN Social Development Goals, didn't appear out of anywhere. They are a continuation of 8 Millennium Development Goals set in 2000, which aimed to halve poverty by 2015. The idea came from Rio Summit in 2012. It was the largest summit in the UN history, and Colombia and Guatemala proposed goals to follow up from the Millennium Development Goals. Poverty, as measured by living on less than $1.25 a day, has halved. Setting goals worked. In a complex world, goals helped organizations and countries align their agendas and prioritize funding. The new goals that we are working with, all of us probably every day now, are the results of a 3-year process involving 83 national surveys, over 7 million people, making it the most significant consultation in the UN history. And finally, nations agreed on the list of 17 goals. Of course, some people argue that 17 is too many and that goals are not legally binding. However, as we know, this is a very common trend in the international law to have this kind of suggestions and to prevent endless legal obstructions. So we have 17 goals and 169 targets embedded in 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. They became a roadmap for governments, administration, public and private institutions. They've been translated into international, national, local and business goals. I even spotted the 17 colorful squares in my son's preschool recently. So they are really opened new markets and new opportunities, and they started something that is called transition from old capitalism into stakeholders capitalism. So if we look at it in a little bit more details on the next slide, we can see that here we have the goal number 7, affordable and clean energy. And this goal is connected with 3 main targets. Some of them are well defined on this level, like target 7.3, which is by 2030 double the global rate of improvement in energy efficiency. Some of them are quantified more on the national levels. All of them have business implications though. Let's focus on target 7.3. I already mentioned. For business, it means increasing energy efficiency in the operational process, taking into account also the supply chain. And as this was said, the next step that followed was also the issues of energy and energy efficiency started to be highlighted in non-financial reporting directive, the reporting frameworks. And what we observe in recent years in different regulations is that those targets are being translated into more precise metrics and disclosures about the business practices, strategies, approach, what gives also to investors a very handful solution and way to look at the business and analyze the business in a new ways. So as I mentioned before, the goals and targets can be translated into business opportunities. Click now, please. And the business, Eva, could you change the slide? Oh, thank you. So the Business Commission for Sustainable Development identified some 60 sustainable and inclusive market hotspots in 4 key economic sectors, such as energy, cities, food and agriculture, and health and well-being. However, to reach the point where the 2030 agenda will be completed, an annual investment of estimation, say 5 to 7 trillion is needed. And UNED Finance Initiative is estimated that SDGs annual finance flows relative to SDGs investments needs. And the effects of their work you can see on the right side of the screen. They analyzed all market players, from official development assistance through sovereign wealth funds, development financial institutions, and the contributions made by private equity and institutional investors. But the financing SDGs is a complicated task. It requires unprecedented coordination between public sector organization and private institutions. And today, in the case study of Solas and Polish Social Venture Capital Fund, we will explore more about this kind of cooperation. It also requires a lot of significant reforms to global financial regulations and financial institutions. And this is also underway with sustainable finance disclosure regulations that is coming into force in March 2021. And probably Christoph will also touch on this a little bit later in the detail. And also it requires a meaningful commitment from all corporations, large and small. So it takes a lot to bridge the SDG finance gap. And what is really needed is the impact-focused ecosystem, as the authors of the report argue. And this system is underway. We can see that it's being slowly constructed step by step, and the transformation happens already. The thing that you as investors and you as investee, you can be ready for it or you can be surprised by it. So it's a little bit choice that it's time to make right now. The regulations that we are seeing right now are more acceptance of status quo in the Western developed countries in terms of impact and responsible investing, and they are a little bit transformation push in the regions like CEE. So the main assumption and the starting point of the ecosystem that you can see over here on the slide is that governments and municipalities are generally responsible for environmental, social, and economic well-being of the populations. They are primary source of demand for impacts. And as we've seen, the impact-based business model have a potential to decrease the cost of impact delivery or cost to impact ratio. So it creates opportunities for new business models, and it creates push for private sector companies to deliver those solutions, and then push for investors to invest in those solutions. It also creates a space for academia and rating providers to support them with metrics and approaches and frameworks to measure the impact. So basically the most important thing is, and the biggest challenge to create this ecosystem, is to implement the decision-making process in the cost to impact category and the concept of impact itself. And as I said, this ecosystem is under construction at the moment, and without a doubt, a rising number of frameworks and regulations play a significant role in creating it. The number of governmental regulatory initiatives connected to issues set by SDGs rose from 210 in 2016 to nearly 400 this year. And also in the CEE region, we have VIC ESG index at Warsaw Stock Exchange. We have Slovenia Stock Exchange committed to Sustainable Finance Markets Initiative in the United Nations. So those changes are really happening all over the world. And each generation of ESG-related regulations brings more standardization and more control, as I mentioned before. So SDGs can be a helpful map that can guide companies and investors towards more responsible, sustainable, and impact investing landscape. As you can see on the next slide, where the authors of Carlson Sticks report analyzed publicly listed companies from 80 countries, there is a lot of companies are actually aligning their strategies with SDGs. However, for the moment, it's worth to notice that SDGs related to business operations and climate change, energy issues seems to be more popular or more material to the companies that decided to join 2030 agenda. However, we should remember, as there is this ecosystem of investment in SDG on the next slide, that SDG finance is more than green finance. And this graph on the next slide shows. Can I ask for the next slide? So, okay, that SDG finance is more than green finance, and the focus on climate-related issues and social-related issues is one of the factors that distinguish responsible, at the moment at least, responsible and sustainable investors from impact investors. And the EVPA report shows that investors for impact funds support social purpose organizations worldwide and their contribution to SDGs. And 63% is also worth to see what kind of instruments they use. And 63% invest in the form of equity, 31% debt, and 6% use a hybrid financial instrument. And we will talk a little bit more about this today. And their main targets are education, agricultural, health, and then last but not least, environment as well. So moreover, what we can see here, but it's also mentioned in the report, they are very actively looking for new investments that are connected with SDGs. And on average, they screen 168 options per year, but only 4 ends up as a new investments. What is really really interesting ratio about, and tells a lot about impact measurements and business opportunities and how complicated it is to create the right ecosystem to attract this kind of investors. So really brief introduction, and I hope I was able to set some context, but now I really would like to introduce Christopher Klein from ESG Portfolio Management, who will share his experience and also challenges, because it's not that easy to build positive SDG impact portfolio. So, Christoph, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, great to have you, Christoph. Thank you so much for joining. So I'm just showing myself to kind of give the touch of time. The floor is yours, and just let me know when you want me to switch the slides. There is a bit of delay, so I will try my best. Okay.
All right, thank you very much for your invitation. I'm very, very happy to present. And my topic is really to bring everything together in a sustainable space. Many dimensions, as you will see, so I will have to run through the slides, but I'm certainly happy and open for questions, and I would call it a puzzle. So next slide, please. Right, so we have a best-in-class positive SDG impact, as we have heard before, difficult to measure. And then I've come down to eco-label, and can we still diversify in a very sustainable fund? How does it work in practice? So how can we solve the puzzle? Right, so again, SDGs, so thanks to Marta, we have heard quite a bit already. And then ESG, certainly many sustainable funds use exclusions. Then coming to climate, CO2 intensity is a thing backward looking, which is often reported, but now we need to look climate risk TCFD compliant, which is forward looking. I will briefly touch on taxonomy and the eco-label, and again, showing can we solve it in a liquid, diversified investment fund, and that's what I call the puzzle. Right, the growth is quite nice. I just have numbers from Germany here, and they are published by FNG every year around summertime. And you see it's a big increase. So it's 183 billion invested in sustainable funds and managed in Germany. And you see the growth is quite nice. So it's below 10% at the moment, so still some potential, but at least we are on the right track. So I'm happy about it. Next slide, please. I said exclusions. I think from the 100 years ago, that's where everything started, the very basic things, and kind of very often used exclusions are weapons, nuclear, coal, fracking, oil, gene technology. That's especially coming from the Catholic Church. They don't like it. We also exclude alcohol, gaming, pornography, tobacco, animal testing if the sales is above 5%. And countries are excluded if there are death penalty, huge corruption, and kind of breaches, which we don't like to see. So these lists of exclusion criteria in our funds reduce our universe, as you can see at the bottom, from 20,000 companies down to 3,800. That's quite a lot, but I can assure you it's enough to still be able to diversify. So coming to the key features of sustainable perspectives, we see ESG, environmental social governance, mainly as risk. So risk management so that you can sleep well, and our investors hopefully as well. And the other side is the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. So they are created for kind of, as we have heard, more governance, municipalities, but we applied also for corporates and believe that kind of makes sense because we want to create a positive impact. And that's for us a good reason to wake up in the morning and to do something, to be meaningful, to have a positive contribution. And we understand the concept of additionality, but also like engaging, as we see a bit later, is also hopefully pushing towards the right thing. So we measure it for our fund. Here we have it for our balanced fund, equity and corporate bonds. And we use the MSCI ESG methodologies, and they are looking for what percentage of the turnover of the company can be targeted directly to its SDG. And here you see the outcomes. The fund is at 47%. And the biggest thing is kind of zero hunger, so food, healthy food, then responsible consumption, affordable clean energy, climate action. And I have to say, an endowment asked us specifically to increase our impact towards education, SDG 4. And we are now really working very, very hard to find companies with super high best-in-class ESG quality, no kind of the breaching exclusion criteria, and having a very positive contribution towards education. So if anybody of you has an idea and knows a very good company, please come back to us. I would be very, very happy to invest. That's the second methodology. It's called Regero Iris. And what I like here, it's symmetric because you have a positive impact that's dark green, but you maybe can also have a very negative impact. And you need to consider this, and you will need it later on in the EU taxonomy in the term do no significant harm, so that you need to be mindful and knowledgeable also about possible negative impact. So that's why I like that. Next slide, please. Here we have written an overview. It's really just an introduction because the SDGs are just 5 years old. Methodologies and data needs to be developed. And here we have kind of a very brief overview about tools and providers and their methodologies very briefly, because then you can start a conversation and select what is kind of fitting your needs best. And it's good to see that there's a development which is hopefully servicing investors, clients, and society in the future. One example, this is a company, you see the bright lights on the roof. They are doing lighting, and the thing is they last for 10 years and they're super energy efficient, and that's certainly very good for environment. So they're ticking the SDG 7, 9, and 12. And so we conclude it's a very high impact. It's a new company. It's a kind of high yield, and the coupon of 5.75 is certainly in this environment incredibly attractive, but I need to warn you, this bond is small and very illiquid. So from a fund management perspective, we cannot invest more than 1% in such a bond. Although we certainly like it, we see the impact. So that is one of our positions I like to present here. Next slide, please. So big gap. As I said, we see ESG mainly as a risk. And here we have Vale, the very, very awful tailing dam incidents. 300 persons died. The area is polluted. Cleanup costs billions. So it's absolutely awful. I applaud the Church of England because they started a global initiative to make the tailing dams more safe. So they, with other investors, talk now to mining companies to try to avoid that these things happen again, because it's kind of embedded in the mining industry. And for investors, it's important to know, can we see it before the event happens? So what are the risk systems? Are there warning signs and so on? And here I come back again to MSCI ESG, and they had a B rating, which is the second worst for Vale before the event. And after the event, it went down to the worst CCC, and Vale had accidents before. And the kind of the standards and the investments and technology and safety haven't been convincing. So that is why the ESG rating was already very poor, and that is a warning sign. And our funds have a minimum ESG rating of BBB. Our aim is to have a portfolio rating for our funds of AAA. That is, you see on this slide, and you see the distribution of our ESG ratings on the bottom right. So it's 39% AAA, 41% AA, 3% single A, nothing below, because we want to be clearly best in class. And as you see, we use our engagement to move them even higher, because otherwise we wouldn't get this high portfolio score. Here you see also the carbon intensity is low. We will come to that later. We don't have any investments in brown sectors, the stranded asset theme, but we really like green revenues and no violations, no controversies, no controversial weapons, no tobacco. So that is kind of also an output, and you can have it for free. And then very briefly, we also do our own assessments, not only taking rating and the rating agencies, we do our own calculating, going down to single ESG factors. And here, that was published last year, we did a quantitative credit rating model based on discriminant analysis, and we included ESG factors. And luckily, it's worked very well, and the explanatory power is higher when we embed a dynamic climate factor. And that's certainly fitting very well to the current political discussion and the regulation which is coming up. So climate change is important, and it has an effect on the credit rating of companies. So we are quite happy, and we work with this model in our daily business. Next slide, please. Yeah, so that's what you see. That's the outcome. We get the data from Bloomberg and the climate data from MSCI ESG again, and then we have our internal rating, and we compare that to Moody's and S&P. So that's certainly very quick here, but if you're interested, please come back to me and I'll give you more details. I'm happy to share this. Now, coming to climate, the first thing, as I said earlier, is carbon intensity. So you need to scale and compare. So this is, in this case, the orange thing is CO2 emissions divided by sales. And here you see again our balanced fund. This is 29 tons. The ESG equity index has 166 tons, whereas the German equity index DAX has emissions of 216 tons. So our fund is far below, and that's, that's what we are aiming for, to even push it down further. Next, please. Right, so we present this chart every month in our report. You see here we have the blue line is SDG impact. The red line is inverted because we like to bring it down, is the CO2 emissions, and the green is the ESG quality. There's a gap there because we cannot go beyond 10, so something happened here, unfortunately, but we are very close to see, as you see, obviously our funds with an AAA ESG rating are very close to 10. Next slide, please. Climate risk. This chart on the left is by Professor Hawkins, and you see, unfortunately, it's warming and it's increasing. It's very bad. We have almost a record temperature every year, and we see the physical risk increasing, severe weather, drought, fire. It's really absolutely awful. And it's clearly related to our emissions. So it's kind of man-made. And in the early days, Industrial Revolution, it was certainly North America, Europe causing it. And now you see on the right, especially after 1970s, Asia, unfortunately, is coming up. Lots of economic growth. And so we need to do something on a global scale, but helping especially India, because they are very much based on coal. And if we do not change it and bring our emissions down, we will all die. So that is why we have an urgency here, and that is why, although we have 17 SDGs, it's quite understandable that we kind of need to focus on climate first, because otherwise, you know, the others are unfortunately not mattering that much anymore. And I have a colleague who says, if we have a warming of 5 degrees, then risk and return doesn't matter anymore. So the TCFD is extremely important, the standard setter, and that says a board member needs to be responsible. It needs to be in the strategy of a company. You need to define metrics and you need to report about it. So that's why you see the 4 points highlighted here. And that's what investors are asking now. You know, it's, if a company is not delivering on that, I think the risk is just too high. And some companies need to smell the coffee and start working on it. Right, start work on it now so that you have scientific-based targets, because you cannot say, okay, we will start in 8 years' time and then we do a lot. Because sometimes board member contracts are maybe 2 or 5 years and they don't like the work, the investments, the capital spending, all of that, but it needs to be done as soon as possible. And you can, the probability is higher that you get there if you have small steps and start early. Because if you delay and try, then the cost might be awful and you might have a competitive disadvantage, or maybe even the inevitable policy response will kick in. So this is why I say, you know, get to this topic quite soon, please. Next one. This is kind of my Christmas gift for you, the alignment cookbook. It's for free. You can download it from the internet. It's a very good description of climate risk, and it's also providing some insights about tools, technologies, methodologies. So it's a bit more than 200 pages, but it's a very good read. So if you are interested in climate change, climate risk, I can highly recommend this text for you. All right, so we use a company called Right Based on Science. It's also mentioned in this book I mentioned. So they use forward-looking data and commitments of the companies, and they concluded that for our 2 funds, the global warming could be limited to 1.75 degrees, and we would certainly work hard to come to below 1.5 and approach the net zero. So, and then this is certainly the climate topic is very important in the taxonomy that you see on the next slide. Here we are. So here only, unfortunately, some segments are eligible, like transportation, utility, which have a big impact on the environment, but also housing, not to forget. And then we need to calculate the alignment. And that's not easily done because you need all the data. CapEx, OpEx, how many percentage of turnover is already green, what's the transition, and again, you also need to consider do no significant harm. It's a lot of work, it's early days, we just have some frameworks and some guidelines, and here I like to give to you the Testing the Taxonomy Handbook. That has been done by PRI recently, has been published, I guess, in September, October. And we have been invited to provide a case study, which is, we did, you see ESG portfolio management, we did on Movi, which is maybe a funny company, but here we tried to do exactly the methodology and came up with our alignment in percent. So it's early days, but I think if you read through the different case studies, you learn a lot and you are enabled to do it yourselves. coming to the end, what's the puzzle? Exclusion, as you have seen, we come down from 20,000 to 3,800. SDG, MSCI is very strict, so we have just like thousands out of that. ESG have 1,200 have a rating of BBB or better. Then 200 are emitted more than 100 tons, so we don't like them. Climate risk, only 600 are already Paris aligned. So kind of it's boiling down. Our final universe is getting smaller, but we are still able to diversify. Good news for you. But if you apply the EU taxonomy, we would conclude that because we are diversified, we have an alignment for our funds of just 20%, and maybe we are not getting the eco label, which we don't think it's very funny, because we strongly believe that our funds are truly sustainable. And that is why we are a bit against this kind of, which would lead to just not diversified funds to get an eco label. We are warning a bit there. I'm happy to discuss with you also to hear your views about that. But hopefully I have given some insights about the many dimensions we have to handle here, but it's doable, and we are happy to serve and answer all your questions.
Absolutely, thank you so much. This was really interesting. I have to say that when I was reviewing your presentation, I read about this case in Brazil, and I heard about this story because I think that actually there was a German company involved in the checking. Exactly. So it was actually quite horrific, I have to say, but really interesting from the perspective of an investor, and how do you look at investments like that, taking the lenses of SDGs and SDGs. So thank you so much, Christoph. I just want to make our audience aware that you can pose your questions in the question tabs, and we will try to answer them in the question and answer. So thank you so much, Christoph. Michał, we move now to Poland from quite international perspective. So the floor is yours. As you saw, there is a delay, so let me know. I will be switching the slides. All right? Thanks.
Thank you very much. So I'm very happy to be able to present to you today our small social venture capital fund. I will go. It is definitely. I didn't realize it before, but it's definitely something which is in the heart of the SDGs. So we were. I think fully. I will talk about it later. We are fully in the ecosystem of SDGs without probably even knowing that we were so well answering this challenge. So I will briefly present the fund goals and the investors of the fund. I will tell you for whom this fund has been set up, how it was set up, and then I will go through the investments that we have already performed, and I will try to show you how we answer these or how we operate really in this SDG system. So next slide, please. Yes. Our fund is called FKIS. It's the Fund for Capital and Social Investment. It has been created. It is a pilot social fund actually in Poland. So it was created with the contribution of the Polish Ministry of Development. 90% of the fund. We have just two investors. One is the Ministry of Development, and the second one is TISA. TISA is a company which is active in the social economy since its setup. It's been now 30 years. So it was really even before this sustainable development was a fashionable concept. We have already started it. It is a company which is fully owned by Crédit Coopératif, which is a French bank. And it was part of a system. It was created in 1990 as a very small venture capital fund supposed to support the transformation in Poland at that time. It was active until 2005, and it was too small to be sustainable. And starting from 2008, we launched a loan fund, first for NGOs and then for social enterprises and micro and small enterprises. Next slide, please. This is the slide that you have already seen. It's just to show you where we are on this spectrum. Our fund is meant to answer the needs of what is called here social investment. So the squares second and third from the left. We can work. Yes, we can go to the next slide. So our potential, we work only in Poland, of course, as we are funded by the Polish Ministry of Development. We work with all types of social businesses. There is a definition in the Polish law. It comprises NGOs, cooperatives, and non-profit companies. So obviously, this type of target means that we have to face some specific challenges. First of all, we had to adapt the instruments that we were using. By definition, NGOs and most of the cooperatives cannot be recipients of any equity investments. So we use, I would say, quasi-equity investments. We call them subordinated loans. It's a term coming from the banking law, but meaning that our loans are really taking the risk of the project, and they can be used by the beneficiaries as kind of quasi-equity, meaning that they can be leveraged. They can go to hopefully to banks. It's probably a dream, but they can leverage on our subordinated loan to get some more senior debt financing. The setup of the fund. The investment period started last year. It will end in June 2023. Then there is another 5 years period of operation, what we call operational period, and where we are supposed to perform the exits. We can extend the life of the fund by two times 1 year. As I forgot to mention it was on the slide, one of the first slides. The whole size of the fund is very small. It is 11.5 million zlotys. So for those who are outside of Poland, it is less. It is like a 2.5 million euro, and we are supposed to invest in roughly 15 projects. So it is quite, I would say, costly in management fee, and the management fee is financed by the European Social Fund until the end of the investment period. Then the waterfall of the fund, just for your information. So obviously, the first is the fees that we are incurring, starting from the end of the investment period. It is the fund that is remunerating us. Then it's the repayment of the principal, and then whatever comes above the principal. And then there is a carried interest. I think I also forgot to tell you the carried interest. Obviously, it will be there only if there is financial profit at the end of the fund, but it is based on the social performance of the investees that we have. Yes, next slide, please. So as I said, we perfectly fit into the SDGs set up by the United Nations. I think that probably it's not even a question for any of the impact investors. I think that we are all fully in the heart of this scheme. Yes, and maybe next slide, please. So in order to answer this impact, I would say part of our activity, So each of our investees, with each of our investees, we set up a set of goals, social goals that they are somehow committing to fulfill. According to the setup of the fund, there must be at least two goals for each of them. They have to be measurable, precise, and the investees are accountable for them. Then on the level of the fund, we have not done it precisely yet. We are supposed to aggregate all these social goals and set up an index on which we will be evaluated at the end of the fund. This is something that we are committed to do by the end of next year with the ministry, and so this will be the base potentially, if there is any, for the carried interest that we might have, which is in line. It constitutes a kind of interest alignment between the goals of the investors and our goals. So we have already invested in 6 projects. We started in December last year, so it was during the last 12 years. We invested 4.8 million zloty, a little bit more than 1 million euro. And as I said, it's a pilot project, so it is supposed to somehow test how the market, the market needs and the market capacity to absorb this type of I would say innovative instrument on this market. So we are trying to have as variable as possible type of topics and investees. So you see here we have different areas in which we are active. Maybe next slide, I will go through a few of these investments, and I will tell you what are the social or impact objectives that we have set up. So here you have an association of which is doing hippotherapy and other horse riding activities, and the objectives on which they are accountable is the number of hippotherapy hours in the year, and the number of children that are subject to the hypotherapy in the and free of charge. The next one, please. The next one is a kindergarten. It's just being set up. It's a kindergarten for children with mental disabilities, and so here it's the number of children that are taken cared for by this kindergarten, and also the number of new employees in the company. Next, please. This is a company, a non-profit company, which is doing destroying paper and data carriers. They are employing 90% of their employment are people who have a difficulty on the employment market for different reasons, and this is there are measures of this index that are on which they will be evaluated. And then finally, you have Solas. So this is a non-profit company. I will not talk more about it because Bart is just following. And obviously, the impact measurement is the saving on the carbon, and also which is a specificity that we like, is really the employment of people with difficulty to get to the employment market in the northern area of Poland where their industrial premises are located. So I will maybe hand it over to Bart now. Maybe just to tell you as a conclusion that this is so we are fully in the SDGs. I think that the challenges we meet is really to see, it's first of all how we will exit our investments, and secondly is the profitability, because probably in the case of associations, NGOs, where we do lending, especially to activities which are related to social care, it is probably not even not decent to expect too high returns. So Bart, I think it's up to you now.
Yes, thank you so much, Michał. I'm really happy that we had an opportunity to get to know a little bit the work that you do. And basically, TISA has been a pioneer in terms of supporting social economy in Poland, but social enterprises, and I think now also businesses with impact, right? Social businesses, because there are, again, many different definitions. So I hope this is a case to follow and to learn and to see that actually there are projects, right? And there are potential investment opportunities in Poland, because I remember our conversations for many years. We've been talking that it's the pipeline of projects is difficult to build. It's not so much is going on, but I think we can see now also based on your work that there are actually projects and things are moving ahead and moving forward. I think also with increasing awareness on that topic. So thank you so much again, Michał. I will switch off your camera, and Bart, if you are ready, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, I think I'm on. Hello, am I hearable? Okay. Okay, so hi, I'm Bart, and I'm representing a company which is Solas. We believe in sustainable building production and sustainable buildings as themselves. And I have like a little story to tell you about our company and where all this came to life. Me and my co-founder Piotr, 4 years ago, we've seen some changes in the market in terms of possible places to live, dwellings, and we observed some worrying direction of what's happening in the market, especially the rising rental cost, and especially in the group of people in my age and below. So I mean between 20 and 30 years old, who are living with their parents, and this is a problem not only in Poland but also a growing problem in Spain and in UK, where the rental costs or the possibilities for funding the own dwelling for people of young age or people with underpayment is really highly growing. Also, probably every one of you have faced in some time of your life the mortgage, right, which is long-term burden for the family and long-term investment of your own dwelling, which is obviously not a best way to fund your dwelling. And we see two very growing problems. So living in a low standard, especially in the outskirts of big cities, and environmentally unfriendly lifestyle of people connected with their dwelling. Especially in Poland, we have growing problem with smog, so like air pollution, and with dwellings concerning technologies for heating, especially, that are well overdated and not according to our sustainable goals, especially in terms of the CO2 emissions and growing potential of warming of the planet. So we came to a few observations in terms of the possible architectural and technological designs, and we developed the house, like a first unit of a house, which with the integrated design for architectural and devices, or like heating technologies, brought us to this construction. As you see, some of you can feel right now some kind of unease. Why this structure? Why this shape? And this is connected with the shape of the house, is connected with the possible maximum output of the photovoltaic panels that are on the roof. So the design of the house connected with the design of the all its technology has been specially prepared for bringing up the maximum potential for the SDGs, as we call for today's meeting, but with the maximum potential of the energy output, as well as CO2 emissions, lowering CO2 emissions for the dwelling and for the people living in such house. Also, we proved the possibility for the zero energy house prefabricated in the manufacturing zone. So this house that you see here on the render is also available to see in Warsaw. It stands there since 2018. So we have consecutive 2 years of data coming for solar panels, from temperature meters, and from outputs in our house, and we proved that our houses have the potential to be zero energy, and that means that the dwellers will never ever pay for single dime for running their house, and I mean heating of the air, so the warm comfort for living in a house. Secondly, the warm water, and thirdly, all the devices that are usually used by the dwellers. I mean, washing machine, dishwasher, TV, lighting, and all the necessary devices that we use every day, especially right now when we are moving our lives to the COVID digital life, right? And we are staying in home. So this is very important to secure the 100% output for the energy for the dwellers. Our technology concerns prefabrication, which is pre-producing the elements beforehand in the factory and bringing them to the plot. And we believe also not only in optimization in terms of the living in a house, but also entire process is very important. So here, the 18 prefabricated elements for the single unit can be transported to the client in the one lorry. So we also taking care not only the life cycle of the building as per material and production, but also per transportation, and at the end, obviously, the use of the product. In 2020, we have built 9 Solas units, and here we have some examples. So each time we also have to take care. So we believed at the beginning that every single house will be same, and it's going to be super easy and super quick to assemble them. We assembled the house in times of 2 days, so the whole product is on the plot in 2 days, but the finishing of the house, roofing and tiling, all those little works that has to be finished to have like a really high class product is around 1 to 2 weeks after the assembly. Here you can see some of the challenges. So for example, in the first picture, you can see that the building has to be prolonged because of some local regulation. In second, you can see like the land has not been very kind to us, and it was like falling down underneath the house, so we had to build some additional construction. And on the third, you can see like problematic two-sloped roof, which is also sometimes like a government regulation. So we kind of have to each time change our products to what's on the plot. In 2021, we are planning to double our production, thanks to this slide, which was the local Narodowe Centrum Badań i Rozwoju, local like a Polish agenda for bringing up research and development projects. We have established a project in 2019. We are right now on the finishing of the project. It was basically the idea to produce the houses without such an extensive manual labor required. We developed and right now produced like a special machinery, special production line for first-hand bringing up the production to higher level, and secondly also to possibly reduce the like a reduce material waste in the process. And also what we are really looking forward is to showcase this innovation project, to showcase the autonomous production, to possibly become a leader in technology for production of those prefabricated walls, and this is one of our strategy for future investment also. Next slide. What's very important for us was that in terms of startup, which we believe we still are, we started with a product that is simple to make and accessible in terms of a price. We see it as like a gateway product, which is like a single module, like a plus energetic. We had great response from media and from customers in Poland, around 4,000 emails to this day with the questions about the product and potential possibility to place it on our future clients' plots. But we see it as like a first stage for bigger schemes of possible production of numbers of units, which will be in future, right? And little slide about the climate impact. The three things that we are calculating in terms of the life cycle analysis was basically the production of the prefabricated elements. We are comparing ourselves to the current market leaders or like current market standards in terms of the building blocks, building elements, building materials, as well as the building like way of erecting the houses. We see in terms of the use of our materials, as well as the technology of production of those elements. In our life cycle analysis, we got a reduction of around 1/3 to the 20 tons of CO2 of the that is like withholded in materials that are being assembled on the client's plot. Secondly, we believe that in terms of the transportation and thanks to possibility of moving one house on one lorry, we are reducing about half of what is the current standard per meter square of the usable space of the houses. And finally, our pretty much biggest pride and the way that we want to develop our company is the use of the plus energy houses. And here we have something that is really amazing in terms of output of CO2 in terms of the use of the house, thanks to 100% of the net zero energy, like to achieving net zero energy house standard, we are reducing about 6.4 tons of CO2 annually in terms of the energy that is required for our dwellers to what we actually can give them with the use of our technology. And very important note from us is that thanks to the investment of TISA, we could actually achieve today's stage. And I really believe that in terms of like companies which are like production companies, or the companies with some kind of like potential products that are better in terms of the sustainable goals. This is very important because it is very difficult to bring up the production to life, the production of something that is not well established on the market, and something that is like a hardware product without the support of venture capital. And this was like a great match for us, because otherwise it could not be possible for us to move to this stage. So yeah, thank you. I can answer the questions about our company.
Excellent, thank you so much, Bart. So actually maybe a follow-up question from me, because we had the two of you, the social venture capital and your company, presenting. You mentioned that a little bit, but if you could just elaborate more whether you think that it would be possible to find another investor in your company if it was not social venture capital, or why did you choose actually social venture capital? Because I'm sure you approached other VC funds and probably they were, I'm sure they were interested. So what's your experience?
So my experience with TISA and especially with Michał is that while we've been preparing ourselves to the investment, it was very like idea focused process, and the one that is not only about the money and about like what we're going to be investing it in, but what can be achieved. And this is something that from very beginning was like on prime. So so the human part of the whole process was very important, and the idea that kind of connected us with Michał, with TISA, with the team of keys of the fund. And secondly, like we believe also that very much with my co-founder, and that was like an idea from the very beginning, that we do something which is, we don't want to waste our lives for doing something which is again and again the same story, the same old notes and old kind of like a story of building house after house with the lowest possible cost and lowest possible innovation in terms of our clients. And from the very beginning, it was the idea that we do something differently and something that can really benefit society and really benefit the pockets of our customers. And I really believe that Keys has understood our idea and our mission, and yeah, that was just like a perfect match.
Great, thank you so much. So I'm giving the floor now to Staszek Kastory and Christoph, and I'm gonna, Marta, if I can put you on, yes, on video. So this is the moment for questions. I know that Staszek has been collecting some questions. I will actually hide myself and I rather listen to your response. So Staszek, take over.
Oh, thank you, Eva. Thank you everyone for sharing your insights with us. It was really interesting to listen and to get your point and your perspective and to understand better what you do. We have some questions from the audience I will like to ask, and then maybe we'll have some additional questions coming during our Q&A session. So first of all, it's I will start with Christoph and Michał, because I think it could be interesting. It could be a question to both of you. What is the return on investment of sustainability? How do you see it? Maybe I'll start with Christoph. Yeah.
All right. So there's an important empirical study out of there. It's Friede Bus-Baschen. I'm happy to send it over to you. And they studied 2,000 empirical papers. So it's a meta study, and they concluded that it's significant that sustainability does not mean that you have to give up returns. So the empirical finding is that you reduce volatility and downside risk in doing it in general terms. We see that the universe is going down, but still we can diversify, so it does not have a negative portfolio impact. Then certainly it depends on the asset class and market where you are based. So if you have investment grade euro bonds, short maturity and all of that, it's difficult to make a return unless you are an active investor doing new issues and all of that. So as you are still limited by the market, basically. And then if you go to technology leaders, I not only mean technology sector, but also good food, healthy pharmaceuticals and all of that, you can certainly pick winners and they can definitely outperform, but they are also kind of bound to market performance because they have some kind of correlation. So it's tough to say in absolute numbers that in a sustainable fund, such type, you will maybe get 4%. We are aiming to have it because we understand that endowment need kind of dividend payments every year, and we are careful to have kind of a risk management to have downside protection. But in this environment, you know, it's so kind of made expensive by central banks and all of that, it's not easy to promise high returns. I just would be cautious and warn that maybe what we have seen the last 10 years would not be, possibly not the future.
Thank you very much, Christoph. Michał, would you like to add something to
Yeah, I think we have a very different, we are in a very different point. So we obviously do not have any type of market studies or you know, we don't have any past, right? We started investing last year. The investment with Solas dates from March this year. So obviously I will say that this is a typical equity investment that we made here. And here the return can be, if we manage to, I mean, if this is a success, it will be definitely a financial success in the same time as the ecological and social impact will be achieved. I think that the specificity of the fund that we are having is that we are investing in a different type of organizations, the NGOs and social and cooperatives, where we invest with the loans. So then I would say that even if they are risk sharing or risk taking loans, the risk is probably lower than a typical equity investment on the other side. And the exits are easier because they are, I would say, automatic. But of course, the returns are probably potentially lower than on an equity investment, which would be a success. We have a flat rate that we apply to the loans, plus a kind of success. A part of the interest is based on the results of the business that we are funding. But of course, I cannot talk about numbers or returns because it's been now 12 months since the first investment.
Sure. Thank you very much. Bart, I have one question to you. Besides energy efficiency and pricing of the houses, have you also an amended circular economy concept in terms of used materials to avoid long-term waste?
So basically, what is important in the circular economy is that the material can be circulated back to like raw materials. And in terms of our house, it is possible. We have calculated that it is 80% of the material that can be recirculated back. But what we see in terms of the Polish housing market, Polish houses, and especially after the disposal, that the recirculation could be performed, it is still like a market that is really underdeveloped. One of the examples is the photovoltaic, and every one of us, I believe, is like a great supporter of the photovoltaic revolution that is happening right now in Europe. But the question is, what's going to happen in terms of 20-25 years with all those photovoltaic panels that will be that their efficiency will drop below the level that is really in favor of the customers. So there is like some questions which could not be answered right now, and I believe, as everyone, we are postponing them in terms of 25 years and ahead of us. In terms of the disposal of the product, and this is something that is also important when you're producing some products that have to last for long years. And in our case, it is 50 years that we are giving like a guarantee for the constructions and for the house to last in terms of all the solutions. And in 50 years time, I believe I will be dead, right? So I will be 80 plus. So this is something that is really hard to account for in those long-lasting projects. I think we are bringing those problems to our future generations. But we believe that the products that we like, the usage, reputable usage of the materials that we are using, could be performed in the level of 80%. But I don't really believe that anyone will hassle to recirculate those materials, as well as in any kind of like a buildings that are currently like taken down or anything like this. It is a very, very complex problem, I believe.
Okay, thank you. I have a question to, I think, all of you, because I believe each of your perspective will be different, and it will be very interesting to listen to your answers. What, from your perspective, is accelerating the growth in investment in sustainability? Maybe I can start with Marta now, because your perspective as a professional working with companies will be interesting, and then if each one of you could also present yours, that would be really, really great. Marta, we don't hear you. Okay, so maybe let's jump to Christoph, and then we will, when Marta will fight with technical difficulties, we'll get back to her.
Self-muted. Marta is self-muted. So Marta, you need to unmute yourself.
She's trying. Okay, let's jump to Christoph.
Okay, so we are seeing some increase in demand and some inflows in sustainable funds, but I would say that's not sufficient yet. And there's a huge potential. Maybe there's uncertainty regarding taxonomy, regulation, and some publication rules. And we need some standardization, but I say again, we shouldn't wait, because the problems are there, and we need to do something good while earning some money, which is absolutely possible. So that's why I'm so happy about this event today, because we can talk about it, we can convince and invite investors. So we are quite open, for example, and by full intention, we start to invite investors from 100 euros. And like beginners in the job, they can start saving. So it's not only for family offices and wealthy people, because that is also a point of fairness, that many who like to save for the future can invest. So that's just an invitation, and the more the better for all of us, I guess.
Thanks, Christoph. Michał, the same question to you. It's interesting to see your perspective, because when we,
from our perspective, we have been set up by Crédit Coopératif, which is a bank which it's been a long time that they were, even before the sustainable investment or impact investment became fashionable, they were trying to work in this I would say social sector on different topics, of course, and so TISA is by definition an institution which was set up in this with this objective. And I must stress also the role that the public authorities in Poland fulfill here. Is TISA is working on the loans to NGOs and social enterprises. Thanks to the contribution of the public money, it is coming from Europe. But I think that the measures adopted by the Polish government are quite good, and we are quite before some other countries which are starting to be aware of this issue. And of course, the next steps will imply a higher private contribution. So as I said, our fund is 90% funded by public money. It will definitely not be possible in the next round, and we know that. I mean, maybe it's the ministry that should talk here, but definitely in the next round, the private contribution will have to be higher. I know that there are some other initiatives on the impact investment, like Valores, that Eva is running. So I think we are in a very, very good and exciting times where this is something that is really becoming very fashionable, and it's a good fashion.
Bart, do you see the differences? Are investors and clients changing? Do you see the progress here?
Yeah, I believe Michał used some kind of a word which is word fashionable, and I think this is something that is fashionable, and especially I see many friends of mine my age, people who still have this this great belief that they can change the world really hardly. So I believe that this is something which is like driving our like an inner will of changing the world for better. And this is, I think, amazing, especially in terms of the people minds, people's power, and this is something that brings me like a goosebumps when I think of young people who are really believing that they can bring up the project and bring up the companies up that can change the world. But the only thing that is really worrying for me is that that the mismatch of the needed funding for better products. And I can show you only on my example, like our houses in productions are more expensive, and for the customers they're more expensive to bring up, even though they are bringing them some savings in future, but even though they are bringing saving for planet, they will be more expensive because they have technologies and solutions that are more costly to secure some of the need for the planet. And I really believe that that bringing up like the SDGs and bringing up like better products to our society will be more costly than the current offerings. And this is something that is very difficult to bring up, like more funding for the companies that are fulfilling the SDGs. And I really think the need of the country support and schemes like this, that the VCs could have like support from the government, support from public money, to balance those inequalities between companies who are producing better products, which will be costly, to the companies which currently are not doing such a great job.
Okay, thanks. Marta, do we have you back on?
Oh, I'm online. Yeah, I managed to unmute myself. Well, from my perspective, I'm working a lot with the corporate side and with a lot of the companies, and I can see that it's a pretty complex problem, and there is a lot of changes. So there is a big difference between, let's say, innovators and the global companies who are present in our region, that started a movement toward more sustainable business models long time ago, like even 20 years ago, and they should start some changes towards this, what we call now SDGs, or the green economy. And on the other hand, there are small size companies or local companies that never had the pressure from investors or from regulators or from investors, and that they have to be more responsible in the way they work. So we were missing for a very long time in Central and Eastern Europe, in Poland, I think, like the ecosystem and also the critical mass of people who want the change. So people who are educated, who knows about the climate change, who knows about sustainability, responsibility. And that's why I like this webinar series so much, because it's open and it gives actually the tools and the knowledge to everyone, and everyone can watch it. And this is very important to have and build the knowledge and the awareness. And we are still on this level. But what I can see that at the moment is that sticks are working a little bit more effectively than carrots, referring to the title of one of the reports that I referred to. And if I'm looking at this sustainable finance disclosure regulation that is coming in the March, it will be difficult to fulfill for many financial institutions in the region, and a lot of those institutions are not prepared. But it's not only about the financial institutions, it's how they gather data from the companies and from the corporates that they are investing in, they are crediting in, they are working with. And I think this push from the financial sector is really crucial to make the transition faster. And this is what I can see, that it starts to work now. And this is also what makes the difference between developed markets, when this transition started some time ago, and here, where we could see the global companies making some changes and movements, and some FMCG companies, usually with some pressures from the customer trends, but now it brings more companies on board because they have to adjust.
Yeah, that's definitely very important point. Michał, we have one more question to you. How do you select your projects, and do you also provide non-financial support for your projects, and how do you measure your impact? So those are like 3 questions in one.
Yes. As I said, TISE has been on this market of social enterprises since quite a long time, and so the first, I would say, the first projects came really from TISE clients who were already clients for loans, and who wanted to develop, who wanted. We work quite, as I said, quite a lot with NGOs, and so the NGOs, it's not a typical probably investment target for the equity, but they develop, they try to somehow become sustainable really, and to be able to finance themselves without being dependent on grants, and so they develop different types of businesses, either to make it, I would say, make a commercial activity in the same area in which they are present, like social care or this type of activities, or they have simply another activity which is helping them to finance their non-business goals. So these are the first types, and then how to say, and then we are just on this market. So like with Solas, we met through a group of I would say young, innovative companies which are gathering, which are trying to look for investors. The impact is measured, as I said. I mean, it is quite, I would say, it is quite simple on the investee level, because we have very clear, measurable, and hopefully realistic objectives in different areas. As I said, it's either the employment of people who have a difficulty on the market or healthcare, or as in the case of Solas, is the carbon print saving. And as I said, we are elaborating a model of aggregating these various indicators to something which would be a kind of global measure for the fund. There are quite a few methodologies on the market. The EIF, for instance, European Investment Fund, has established something. I mean, people are writing books or thesis on this topic, so we will definitely not do it. We will just take advantage of what is available on the market. And what was the third question? I saw.
No, it was actually, I think you answered to all, because no. Do you support your project?
Yes,
also?
Yes. So there is what is called a technical assistant component in this project. So either we do it ourselves, or we can use consultants for the potential. It is meant for the potential investees who actually sign with us. This is where we can provide this this assistance, and it is meant to help them to become what they call investment ready. So this is something that is embedded in this project, and then we are supposed to somehow accompany or support the investees during the lifetime of the investment. And of course, with a double objective: one is to help them, and the other one is to somehow ensure better returns and lower risk, like in, I would say, probably most of the equity investments, or private equity investments, or social venture or venture capital investments.
Okay, thank you. I see Eva, so that means that we will have to finish soon, but I hope you will allow me to ask just one last question to Christoph. Christoph, we have, could you elaborate? It will be last quick one. Could you please elaborate a little bit on your doubts regarding the eco label?
Yes, we just calculated the alignment. Roughly speaking, it's early days. We will come up around like maybe 20%. But you need more higher alignment to get the eco labels. There's one study out there by, for example, Professor Christian Klein, and he has done 101 sustainable equity funds. And he has done the calculation following the methodology, and the result is that only one would get the eco label if you apply the rules in a strict sense. And if you relax the rules, 6 would pass. So I'm concerned that there might be some person who is just doing maybe a wind farm fund in Norway, and maybe that one would get the eco label because it's obviously green, but this fund is not diversified. So I'm not sure whether the EU is knowing what they are doing here.
All right, let's hope they know. Thank you so much, Staszek. I really want to thank you all for joining this webinar. I mean, for me, I'm delighted actually, and I'm really happy that we have the recording, and we will definitely promote this webinar. I think really good statements that many of you said about making this investment in sustainability fashionable, right? How can we do that? The mismatch about the funding and what is out in the market that Bart was referring to. You know, how to make it faster, right? And I think what Marta has been saying about this push from financial sector, I think that's really interesting. That I really think that maybe we need this narrative even more, that actually the financial institutions, financial sector, investors, banks should be making the push for sustainability, for investments into sustainability to happen faster. They probably are the strongest player to do that, and with the participation of the government, I'm sure we can, and the public institutions, we can definitely achieve more. So really, thank you so much for that. And for having you here. I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and good rest with your families and friends, though we are supposed to meet only in limited groups, but I hope it will be a good restful time for you also. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.